BookTube. Today we're talking about the best books that I read in 2025 so far from both the fiction and nonfiction genres. I read 28 books in total. If you want to know how, first, this is my job, so that helps. But also, it's just part of my daily routine, which I unpack with some tips in my How to Read More video if you want some more hacks. Even with a full-time job last year, I read 34 books in Q1. I do actually think I managed to read more pages this year, though, as it is, in fact, the year of the thick boy. So this is the cream of the crop from what I've read this year. The usual calls to action apply, likes, shares, subs, all that is cool, but not required. Just hanging out and listening to me ramble is a form of support, and I appreciate the hell out of you for being here. To repay you for that support, I'm just going to jump right into the stack of books that I have on standby here. Now, I've been a good boy, and I have done full reviews for all of these, which you can find on the January, February, and March wrap-up videos. So I'm going to be moving through these pretty quick, kind of like an early morning coffee. So apologies for the brevity if you're not into that, but I did want to note that in case you wanted a more expanded review on any of these. All right, so let's start with the clean 5-star ratings from both fiction and nonfiction. I've got one 5-star stack for the history bunch. The biggest project that I tackled was the Richard J. Evans History of the Third Reich trilogy, which I've talked about multiple times throughout this year because I've read this over a span of 2 months. And I keep promising to do a full review of this on here, and I think that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So like one or two of the next, or maybe within the next 3 videos on here, I'll go ahead and do that. Now, not a whole lot more to say about these other than if you have an interest in how all of this went down with the Germans in that time period, these are a must read, and they're shockingly accessible for the amount of detail in them. These are amazing. Now, the best book I've read this year, hands down, is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I have never given a darn about Westerns other than the series Deadwood, which isn't like your classic or typical Western, I guess. I'm pretty sure it's classified as a Western. Anyway, point being, this just points to the fact that if the characters sing, I'll read any genre. And that's the real strength of Lonesome Dove, the elite character work and authentic dialogue. And there are 2 types of reactions I've seen to like the people that are reading this, and they get to like the first 250 to 300 pages. The first is the like, when does stuff happen kind of thing, because this story is so character-centric, and Act 1 is mainly establishing those characters without any mind-blowing events or big action scenes. For those people, my advice would be to stick with it a little bit longer. But as the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it read, or whatever it is. For the other set of people that are already hooked at that point, I mean, that's the good stuff. I know you're going to lose your mind for the rest of the book if you're already that invested, because this thing builds up like a great pro wrestling match. I don't know if you're a pro wrestling fan, but I am. Where the beginning of the match, it's like low impact. You're establishing the psychology of the match early on, and then the moves get higher and higher impact until you reach like a big crescendo conclusion where it's like high spots and finishers and shocking kickouts and all types of dramatic twists and turns. So yeah, this is my new favorite. I don't know if it's like the #1 book. I think it might be. Can't believe it took me this long to read it, but I'm glad I did. In comparison to Lonesome Dove, Homegoing by Jesse is much shorter, but it still packs a serious emotional punch. I love the format of swapping between the 2 sides of this family over multiple generations. The writing is gorgeous. Each chapter benefited from the groundwork laid down from the previous chapter as we explored some really historic moments in Black history along the way. I figured I would love this, but it's always nice to see when a book lives up to and even exceeds those expectations like this one did. Speaking of high expectations, this one came recommended to me so many times. Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield was thrown in the mix because I want to read more historical fiction this year, and by that I mean like ancient historical fiction. It only makes sense that I would, considering that I love history books, and I really enjoyed stuff like Bernard Cornwell's Sharpe's Tiger and Dan Jones's Essex Dogs last year. And brother, this book may have set the bar way too high for future historical fiction books. Pressfield has serious writing chops. I was surprised by the depth of it as well. I had so many memorable characters, and writing battle scenes that don't make a reader kind of like check out at times, or at least get fatigued halfway through, is tough. But none of this felt like it could be skimmed. I was hooked on every word. I finally get the hype around this. I was talking about Lonesome Dove and the characters earlier on. Well, the reigning fantasy character queen is Robin Hobb, hands down. And she delivered again with the Live Ship Trader series. Both Mad Ship, 5 stars, and Ship of Destiny, 4.5 stars, make the list. I read Ship of Destiny like earlier on, and it wasn't as good as these. And listen, I'm almost hesitant to recommend Hobb to people because she's out to put the screws to you emotionally. And to start her stuff, you should start with the book Assassin's Apprentice, which is book 1 of the Farseer trilogy. And let me tell you, that book is a white van that comes with an offer of candy. It's the shortest of all the books, I think, at least in the first 3 series. And it doesn't quite damage you the way that the others do. And once you're hooked, you're getting punched in the face with like these 800-page plus door stoppers. And they're just like an out-of-control therapy bill, thanks to Hobb. But yeah, Live Ship Traders rocks. These rock. However, I do think I'm going to read a fantasy series this year that's going to top Live Ship, and that is the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. This series is 4 books. I'm in the middle of book 2. But book 1 already has me thinking that Liu is a genius, and it's supposedly the worst book of the series. That's the consensus. And if that's true, then I'm in for it. Like, as I work through book 2, I'm getting really close to like, this is my new personality now territory. The historical aspects are brilliant. The silk punk elements are cool as hell. The political intrigue is excellent. I've got a few characters that I'd ride or die for. And like, there's so much to this series that is working for me. I can't wait to finish book 2. It's really starting to ramp up in the second half. So I'm going to be continuing on with this series. I love this. Next on this list is a 4.5 star book that made my face hurt and pissed me off. The Radium Girls, The Dark Story of America's Shining Women by Kate Moore. This was the March read for the History Sickos book club. And I didn't see a rating from the club that was under 4 stars. One of the reviews from the Sickos said, quote, I felt physically sick while reading this sometimes, and I'm horrified at the fight that these women had for justice. It's an incredibly important read, but if you don't have a strong stomach, maybe find the Young Readers edition because damn, end quote. That's exactly right. I didn't even know there was a Young Readers edition, but I could see why that would be necessary with this one because it's pretty horrific. Another one said, quote, incredible story of a group of resilient women who were failed and lied to by their company, neglected by the legal system, and ignored by the government, causing these women a gruesome and entirely avoidable death, end quote. And that pretty much covers it. It's a tough read. It's a page turner too. I had a couple minor issues with the writing choices, but overall, this was really, really good. All right, let's continue to rapid fire through these final 3 nonfiction reads because like I mentioned before, I've got full reviews up for these already on my monthly wrap-ups. Let's go with Weavers, Scribes, and Kings, A New History of the Ancient Near East by Amanda H. Podney. This is a tremendous mix of micro and macro history. It's also a blend of top-down and bottom-up history. So yeah, you get like 3,000 years of big forces and trends in mainly Mesopotamia, Syria, and Elam. And you're going to explore major civilizations and king names that are familiar enough if you've read on these eras. But you also get tremendous detail into the lives of everyday citizens like brickmakers, merchants, traders, weavers and scribes, obviously, and so much more. We're talking dozens of profiles examined through all the newest archaeological finds, written informally in a way that should work for a general audience. This was super unique and very, very solid. And then we have The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow. It presents a lot of new theories and arguments that, while not entirely convincing on every front, is one that is going to have to be mentioned in future books like this. And I found it to be mostly well-crafted and really, really thought-provoking. What was fun about this one for me was having the books like Sapiens, Guns, Germs, and Steel, and Pathogenesis right by me as I read this, so I could see how they differed or agreed in their various theories. And it felt to me like Sapiens and Guns, Germs, and Steel fell in one camp, while Pathogenesis and this fell in another. And I found these, the two, The Dawn of Everything and Pathogenesis, more convincing, while the first set felt like they were like a mile wide and an inch deep. That's just one man's opinion, though. And finally, this might be my 5th time saying this on my various platforms, but if I've sold you on the History of the Third Reich trilogy by Richard J. Evans, and you find yourself wanting a primer or refresher or whatever, a great option. And the one that I used was Blood and Iron, The Rise and Fall of the German Empire, 1871 to 1918 by Katja Hoyer. This is a brief overview for a general audience, and Hoyer excels at taking these big trends, events, and political power players and boiling them down to their essence in an easy to understand way. The pace is quick on this one, but it never felt like any of the topics were like too shallow. And like I said, it laid down a great base for that Evans trilogy because it allows you to hit the ground running early on as you ease in to what is about 2,500 pages of German history. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this one, and obviously the Third Reich trilogy. I would recommend doing those together. I told you it was going to be quick, and it is. So those are the best books that I've read so far in 2025. The cream of the crop, the best that I've read. Some 5-star bangers. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear if you experience it the same way. If you agree or disagree, your star rating and why. And let's have a discussion in the comments. And other than that, I appreciate y'all sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.